Hi, welcome to Mindful Conversations. My name is Greg Dwyer. My guest today is Debbie Elward. She's a clairvoyant. Debbie, thanks for being on the broadcast.
Thank you for having us.
So first of all, what is a clairvoyant?
Well, there's many different aspects to clairvoyancy. I can see things that other people can't see, meaning spirits, ghosts, elementals.
Wait a minute, what's an elemental?
Like fairies.
No way.
Yeah, I've seen fairies.
You're
I
not
know it
talking
sounds
about
weird.
You're not talking about Providence or up that way.
No.
You're
I've seen that. I've been there, but no.
I
talking
shouldn't
about.
say that. I don't know if I can say that on television. We might have to start rolling again. But you mean really small people?
Yes.
No way.
When we lived in Naugatuck, I would watch one in our garden.
Really?
My granddaughter and I would watch this fairy going from plant to plant.
Have you ever been to Ireland?
No, I would love to.
Oh, I went there a couple years ago, and this guy that led the tour was talking about fairies. He was talking about the fairy trees and all of the tradition. And I'll tell you, he was, what a storyteller. He would just rope you in, almost like they were real. But you really believe
I believe they're real,
You do?
Yeah.
Like Tinkerbell?
Well, there's fairy circles where they've actually seen them. People say if you go out in the woods and it's very quiet, you can actually hear fairy music. But you also have to be open to the fact that you want to hear it.
I never heard this before. I thought that it was just mythology, but you really believe it's true.
I really believe, yep.
Okay, all right. So take us back. When did you first discover this, and why did they not institutionalize you?
I first discovered it in my early childhood, maybe 4 years old.
Okay.
I remember telling my mother that I sat on my great-grandmother's lap.
Okay.
And my mother would say, no, you didn't.
Right.
You can't remember that. And I said, yes, I did. I did sit on her lap. She has a funny way of talking. She was from Ireland. Oh. So she has a funny way of talking. And my mother said, no, you were a baby. And then, unfortunately, my great-grandmother had fallen and broken her hip. And in those days, when she came out of it, they didn't have the modern conveniences that they had now. She was off, so they put her in Fairfield Hills. Okay. And my mother said, no, you never sat on her lap. I said, but I do. I talk to her at all. And my mother looked at me, and I described her to my mother, and my mother said, don't ever do that. Don't talk about this. Don't do that. These things are not real. I mean, she was scared.
Okay, sure.
And being Irish, I decided not to. I liked my imaginary friends. I liked being able to see things that other people couldn't see.
Now, when I was a kid, I'm sure I had an imaginary friend. I remember my brother having an imaginary friend. And I think a lot of people do when they're little kids.
Yes.
But then eventually you grow out of it, or I don't know, something changes. Do you think that these experiences are real?
Oh, I do, yes.
You do?
I think everybody is born with a psychic gift, psychic ability. Okay. But they lose it when they lose that make-believe, when they don't believe in fairy tales anymore, the Easter Bunny, Santa Claus, when they start to grow up. Right. So I think that's when they start losing their psychic ability.
It kind of reminds me of Peter Pan, this idea of innocence and walking or leaving, crossing over and not believing anymore. Right. But you're talking about reality, that you, as a grown woman, still see things that other people don't see.
Well, I really came aware of it when I was in my mid-30s. I was at Gettysburg with my children. All right. And we were at a point at Gettysburg when they were talking about Pickett's Charge. Okay. And they were showing us the layout. Right. And I had looked in one direction, and there was a group of men who I thought at the time were reenactors. And they were terrible. I mean, they looked like their clothes were held on by stitches. All right. They were raggy, they were dirty, and they were at one side. And something in my vision caught my eye, and I looked in the other direction, and here there was another group of men, and they looked like they just stepped out of the showroom. Bright uniforms, gold buttons and everything.
Like actors in a play, in a movie.
So I thought, well, oh, we're in for a reenactment, but nobody else was watching this. I was the only one watching this. All of a sudden, the group on the left started running towards the group on the right, and they were whooping, this weird whooping sound, and they were throwing rocks and sticks, and they were running towards the well-dressed men. Okay. And then all of a sudden, everything faded. And I
everything
was like,
did?
Everything faded.
And it just disappeared, you mean?
Just disappeared. I went, whoa. And I thought, okay, you're really losing it.
Wow.
A couple years, months later, they came out with the movie Gettysburg.
Right.
With, all the big stars and everything. And at one point, when they were going through explaining why they shot it here and why they shot it there, they had said Pickett's charge had run out of ammunition.
Right.
So the Southern boys didn't know what else to do, so they figured they'd pick up sticks and pick up rocks, maybe to scare the North.
And you knew that?
From what I seen, and they had a weird whooping sound that they would call to each other on their farms.
I see.
And I had heard that whooping sound, and then it was all like, came rushing at me. Wow, you can really see these things.
Wow. Now, I remember when I was a little boy telling my classmates, and I guess it must have been kindergarten, about Santa Claus, and saying, look, I know I heard Santa Claus, I knew I heard this, and then you grow up and you see things differently.
Right.
But what we're talking about is something that didn't fade with getting older. The people that you know, your friends, your family, do you share this openly with them?
My family knew, my close family.
Okay.
The kids I went to high school didn't know.
Okay.
They had written a piece on me in the Watertown, Oakville Town Times, and I had people calling me up from high school, and this was like 30 years I'd been out of high school. Why didn't you tell me you could do these things?
Really?
And I said, could I just sit down and say, hey, I can see dead people.
Wow.
What would you have thought? And they
Right.
were all saying, yeah, right. We wouldn't have believed you at the time.
Yeah, it reminds me of the movie with Bruce Willis. What was the name of that movie? Where the little
Oh, The
boy-
Sixth Sense.
Yeah, that movie.
Yeah.
I love. I won't give away the ending if you
I've
haven't seen the
seen it,
movie.
yeah.
But I love the way
Yes.
the movie
That's
ends.
about what I see.
You do.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's amazing.
I mean, many times I'll ask my husband, is that a real person in there? Or am I just seeing somebody else?
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So when's the last time that this has happened for you?
When I walked into my house today.
Really? What happened?
I walked in and I said to Larry, I said, you got to do the house tomorrow because I could feel this energy, and I'm not sure who it is. I do have a few spirits that come and visit,
Okay.
like my mother for one.
Okay.
And I think because of the kids, she loved her great-grandkids, so she comes to see them.
Okay.
But there was just something else there. And the other night I woke up and it was like 3 a.m. and I saw red eyes staring at me.
Oh my goodness. And you're talking not about hallucination, you're
No.
talking about something that's...
I wish they were hallucinations.
Oh, really? So what do you do in a case like that? You call John Zaffis?
I call on Larry.
You call your husband?
Yeah,
Okay, Father
yeah.
Larry. And so what does he do?
He'll say a prayer through the house. He'll bless the house. I think he should, do all the rooms tomorrow.
Okay.
We have a special needs grandson,
Okay.
and I think a lot of his energy might bring these things.
Oh, I see. You think there's a connection between
Yeah,
that.
but we also have a house we're supposed to be blessing sometime this month, and we were supposed to go do it Sunday, and Saturday night we were watching a movie, and I got up, and I couldn't breathe. I mean, it felt like somebody was sitting on my chest.
Now you have asthma, right?
I
You
have asthma,
okay,
yeah.
You do.
But it felt like somebody was sitting on my chest and squeezing my sides. And I was really in distress. Of course, we're in the middle of a snowstorm.
Right.
And the hospital is up a hill, and I really didn't want to go to the hospital. And Larry kept looking at me, and he kept saying, you really should go. And I go, let me just calm down. So I contacted the person with the house, and I said, I'm sorry, I'm not feeling well, I'm not coming
Right.
tomorrow. We'll reschedule. Just like that, I could breathe.
Oh,
As
no.
soon as they read that, I couldn't come.
Oh, no.
So then they're, thinking maybe it's something in the house.
Right.
Well, they had done an EVP, and they had asked who was what the name of the thing was in the house, and
Right.
it came out Prince.
Okay.
So who knows? I don't think it's Prince, Purple
rock-
Rain.
the rock star?
But it could be,
Really?
Prince.
Yeah, so how important is it to find out the name of an entity?
Well, it sort of gives them recognition.
Okay.
And they have to, like you're walking down the street
Right.
and they say Greg Dwyer.
Right.
It gives you recognition. So,
Right.
it's
I
sort
usually
of.
cross the street because I owe them money. You know what I mean?
Yes.
That's what, or they're a family member. I cross the street.
Run.
Exactly. Well, this is wild. I guess the next question I have for you is, how did you get involved with the Warrens, and what was your relationship with Lorraine and Oh, it's
Ed.
Ed, yes, thank you.
I got involved. My sister and I went to one of their lectures.
Okay, gotcha.
And we were walking around, and I had gone up to Lorraine, and she goes, "Oh, my dear, your grandmother's always around you."
Oh, no.
And my grandmother, my mother's mother, we were very close. My sister and myself and my grandmother. And she had died in 1968, and I missed her terribly.
Right.
And it was nice to hear that she was always around.
Did you believe her when she said that?
Yeah, because other people had seen a young girl sitting between my sister and I one time.
Okay.
And the gentleman that saw him saw a picture of my grandmother in her teens. She said, that's the young girl there.
Oh,
and
okay.
So I believed her.
Okay.
And there was a sign-up paper for classes, and my sister says, "You want to do it?"
Oh, no
and I
way.
go, "Yeah."
Really?
So we signed up, and we went to classes. Well, the first night that Ed Warren and Lorraine took us to a haunted house was the night of my 40th birthday. I was scared to death.
Wow.
We stood in a circle outside this house in Hartford, and Ed wanted to say the Lord's Prayer. With each word on that Lord's Prayer, I shook a little bit more.
Really?
Shook a little bit. We went in, I was petrified. They put us in the solarium, and my sister and I sat there. And at one point, they're doing prayers, and they're asking the spirit to show itself. And I see this white shape walk across.
No way.
And it was like, wow.
Did anybody else see it?
My sister.
Okay.
And I go, wow, this is cool. Yeah.
Are you kidding?
The fear left me.
Oh, it did?
Yeah.
You would think you would be more afraid when you would see something like that.
No, it was like, I had read their books, and I was thinking, why would anybody in their right mind go into a haunted house if they knew it was haunted?
Right.
And once I saw that spirit, I sort of knew why they went in.
Okay.
I can't explain it, but I was in it all the way.
So what are they trying to do? Help these spirits move on?
But they were trying, yes.
Is that what they're trying?
Yes,
and
they were.
What happens? They get stuck? What's the
They have
ordeal?
unfinished business, some of them,
okay.
or they, we met a spirit in a graveyard that would not move on because he was mad at God because his wife died. She died a young woman. So he cursed God.
Okay.
And when his time came that he was going to pass, he was afraid of what God was going to do to him. So I was able to talk him into the light.
Okay.
And just as he was walking into the light, his wife stepped forward to get him.
Wow.
And I was telling him basically, God's forgiving.
Right.
You're the one that's making your own hell.
Right.
By keeping this going.
So I was up at a nursing home back probably in the fall, and I was walking out visiting somebody, and this priest came out, and he says, "I want to talk to you." And I said, "Sure." And we exchanged information, and he says, "I got to tell you something." Complete stranger, like I didn't know him from Adam. And he said to me that when a family member is passing, the immediate family will be called in, they'll sit around and they'll be in a prayer circle, or they'll just be standing observing this person passing. And he told me that he sees other people in the room.
Yeah.
And I went, "Really?" He goes, "Oh, yeah." He says, it happens a lot around here.
I worked in a nursing home, and I witnessed many of them coming to escort their family members. In fact, when my mother was passing, this is really weird, she would ask me who was in the room with her. And she goes, "Who's those people by the window?"
Really?
And I said, "I don't see anybody there." We were on the second floor, so there was nobody, there was just my mother and I.
Okay.
And she goes, "Is your father here yet?" And I go, "Mom, I went to tell her that he'd been dead." And she goes, "Is he here? He promised he'd be here." And I said, "If he promised, he'll be here."
Okay.
She goes, "Who are those two little girls over there?" I said, "I don't see those two little girls." Now, I lost granddaughters, two little granddaughters, one before birth and one 6 days after birth. I can only imagine that it was them showing up, that we'd had my mother to ourselves, and now they were welcoming her into their world.
Okay.
So I wondered why I didn't see them, but then somebody told me it wasn't for me.
Okay.
It was for my mother.
Okay. You don't think these are just hallucinations, or as you're getting older and dying that your brain plays
I don't believe
tricks?
that, no.
No, you don't.
I mean, it's more comforting to feel and to know that your loved ones come to you than to know it's a hallucination, your brain's backfiring because you're dying. I'd rather know that my mother and father and my grandkids are there to welcome me.
Yeah, yeah. And have you ever had a near-death experience or talked to anybody that's died on the table and then came back and they had stories? I mean, that's a different topic.
I've watched a lot of them.
Sure.
I don't think when I was born, they didn't believe that I'd live. So,
right.
you know, I have no idea to the extent, because my mother would never talk about it. If you asked her, she just, I can't talk about it even 50 years later, you know, so I don't know.
Right. Well, I definitely believe in the supernatural. I mean, I had an experience, I don't want to get into it, but I do believe that there's something beyond the normal, you know. So what was Ed like? I mean, you know, they did the movie The Conjuring, and of course Lorraine was in it as well. What were those two people like?
Ed was like the father that everybody wanted. I mean, he was very eager to show his museum. If you wanted to learn and you were serious, he was very eager to tell you. My sister and I spent a lot of time with Ed and Lorraine. We did they had a monthly newsletter, and we did pieces of their museum, and Ed would tell us stories. I mean, we had him, you know, all captive to ourselves, and he would tell us stories, and he'd tell us about the different places they went and everything. And Lorraine was more, you know, she'd tell us stories, but she wasn't as much as he was. You know, he was outgoing.
Was he an Irishman? What was his nationality? What do you know?
I think he's Greek.
Okay, Greek. Okay.
Because he's John Zaffis' father. No, wait a minute. I'm thinking maybe Polish. I don't know. It was Meineke. His real name is Warren Meineke.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Ed Warren is his stage name.
Oh, I didn't know why did he change it? That's interesting.
I don't know.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I met them in the 70s. They were in Newtown, and they gave their speech. And it wasn't later until I met John Zaffis. And at that point, I thought to myself, this is definitely real.
Well, you met John Zaffis. Ed is a lot like John Zaffis.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay, very nice. So what's the future? Since the Warrens are gone, what do you think the future holds for this? I don't want to call it an industry, but for this this ministry, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of people that want to be famous. There's a lot of television shows. I think there would be a lot of people that, you know, they go into this for wrong motives because they want to make a name for themselves.
And money.
And money? Okay, all right. So what would you say is the next generation? Is it John? I guess he is the grandfather of the paranormal.
Well, they call him the Godfather.
The Godfather.
Yeah.
Okay, yes. So do you think that he, maybe you, your husband, are the next generation?
We're hoping that.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's almost like apostolic succession if you think about it. You had a close connection with these people. It's not like you read their books and you never met them. Right. You know, and John's healthy and he's working with you too.
Yes.
So tell us a story, a bizarre story that happened to you in this work.
I remember, well, it's not about ghosts. Well, it's more like a demonic.
All right.
We had this woman in Bridgeport, and she would go under attack from this entity, and she would lose her sight.
Her sight?
Her sight.
Okay.
And she was a very pious woman.
Okay.
And we were there one day, and she had a granddaughter, 6 months old, in the kitchen. And I could hear the entity walking around in the kitchen. And all of a sudden, the baby started crying. And I thought, okay, you're going to pick on somebody your own size. So I had my asthma inhaler.
Okay.
I don't have many brains, but I'm Irish. I had my asthma inhaler.
Too. Yeah.
And I said, this is holy water. And I sprayed it in my mouth.
Okay.
Well, everything stopped. She could see the baby stopped crying and everything. We're getting ready to leave, and I'm standing at the door, and I like to talk, and I'm talking and everything. And all of a sudden, I feel a hand on my left shoulder, and I thought, okay, it's Larry. He's telling me, shut up, get out in the car.
Gotcha.
And I feel something grab my right ankle, and I'm thinking, maybe the baby's on the floor or something.
Yeah, sure.
The next second, I'm propelled out of the house.
Oh, no.
Somebody yanked on my ankle, and I landed in the middle of the yard. They're screaming, mio Dio, you know. Larry's out running. 5 days later, I'm supposed to be getting married, and I figured I got broken legs and everything.
Right.
I'm not going to be able to walk down the aisle.
Right.
Nothing happened. He gets me in the car, and he's going, I can't understand it. I can't understand it. I don't know what's going on. I said, well, I sort of challenged the demon. He goes, what? He goes, you know better. I said, but it was picking on the baby.
Right.
So that's one of my bizarre stories.
Wow. So what would you say to a person that's curious about this? Because there's a fine line between respecting this and having just this feeling of, I don't want to get involved with it, a little bit of curiosity, but it also can be very dangerous to somebody that wants to play with maybe a Ouija board.
Right.
What would you say to somebody that doesn't know what they're doing or is just curious in the sense that they might hurt themselves? What would you say to them?
I would say contact somebody that knows what they're doing.
Okay.
I mean, there's so many. I mean, I saw a video the other night where a gentleman wanted to contact his dead friend. So he put 6 Ouija boards around a circle and a candle in between each one. And
why would he do that?
He figured the more power.
Okay.
And it started to spell out the guy's name.
What?
And,
really?
And the candles tipped over.
No way.
And the guy had his leg grabbed and pulled out of the circle.
For real?
Yes. This was on a TV program. It was a documentary. And he went after his friend. He almost killed his friend. So I would say, you know, don't look at TV.
Right.
TV is all hype.
Right.
You
Sure.
know,
Sure.
I mean, the Conjuring movie.
Right.
We've been to the house.
Sure.
It is active.
Right.
There is energy. I've never been there after night, so I don't know if all these things happen. The woman did not end up upside down in a chair to the ceiling.
Right.
You know, that's TV.
Sure.
I mean, we had a lady levitate in our house.
For real?
For real.
No parlor tricks?
No parlor tricks. We were doing an exorcism on her, and we were holding her down because, you know, they do fight and everything. There was her sister was holding her ankles. All of a sudden, I see her sister stand up, and she moves up, and I'm thinking, why are you letting her up?
Okay.
And we were trying to keep her down, and it was like she had so much energy.
I've heard.
And we heard a pop, and everything relaxed. When we went through the video, we saw that the chair and her levitated a good inch off the ground. We didn't see it with our eyes, but we saw it on the video.
Okay.
When they did it in a recreation on TV, they had her up 5 feet.
Yes.
You know,
Sure,
you know.
sure.
So you know, it's all what they show on TV and the TV shows. You've got to take half truth and half theatrical.
But this is television. This is not faked. We haven't rehearsed this, and the things that you're telling me are real to the best of your knowledge. You're not trying to sell a book.
No.
You're not here trying to sell services. In fact, this is not a business for you.
No, it's not.
It's not. You're just literally helping people.
Yes.
You know, so. Okay, in the last couple of minutes that we have left, what are you looking to do in the future with this gift?
We'd like to get out more.
Okay.
We'd like to do more lectures because we feel through lectures, people learn. And if there's people out there looking for some help, you know, you can Google ghost hunters, and you know, you don't know who you're going to get.
Exactly.
And you know, you go to your Catholic church, or you know, they preach against this, but they really don't have the time to sit down with somebody and walk them through the steps of an exorcism or a house clearing. Or
Right. I've heard of house clearings. You know, right now we're in January, so you know the big topic is Epiphany, and I know of priests that have gone into people's homes and did house blessings. But you know, whether people really understand that and it's part of their tradition, that's a whole different story. You know? So how do folks get a hold of you in the last minute that we have left? How do they find you?
We're on Facebook, Debbie Elward. Or they can email me at debandlarry1103@yahoo.com.
Okay. And then what would you do? Like do an interview on the phone with them first?
I would call. Step? I would talk to them and see what usually when I'm on the phone, I can tell. Pretty much.
Wow.
I can actually sort of remote view as to what's going on in their house.
So it sounds like you have a sixth sense in that way.
Yes.
So excellent.
Yeah.
Well, we hope we gave you something to think about. This was a wonderful interview, and thank you so much, Debbie. All right, we'll catch you next time. Mind yourself on Mindful Conversations.